Hello everyone, welcome back to Bible Excerpts. We're gonna have a nice uplifting chapter today, finally, after the very sad problem with Asa that we saw in the last video. Asa became proud, forgot that it was God who made him so rich and powerful and helped him. But now we're going to read about his son, starting with 2 Chronicles chapter 17, and we're going to read the whole chapter because the whole chapter is really good. So let's start. 2 Chronicles chapter 17, verse 1. Then Jehoshaphat his son reigned in his place and strengthened himself against Israel. And he placed troops in all the fortified cities of Judah and set garrisons in the land of Judah and in the cities of Ephraim, which Asa his father had taken. Now the Lord was with Jehoshaphat because he walked in the former ways of his father David. He did not seek the Baals, but sought the God of his father, and walked in his commandments, and not according to the acts of Israel. Therefore the Lord established the kingdom in his hand, and all Judah gave presents to Jehoshaphat, and he had riches and honor in abundance. And his heart took delight in the ways of the Lord. Moreover, he removed the high places and wooden images from Judah. Also, in the 3rd year of his reign, he sent his leaders, Ben-Hail, Obadiah, Zechariah, Nathanael, and Micaiah, to teach the cities of Judah. And with them he sent Levites, Shemaiah, Nethaniah, Zebediah, Asahel, Shemiramoth, Jehonathan, Adonijah, Tobijah, and Tobadonijah, the Levites, and with them Elishama and Jehoram, the priests. So they taught in Judah, and had the book of the law of the Lord with them. They went throughout all the cities of Judah and taught the people. And the fear of the Lord fell on all the kingdoms of the lands that were around Judah, so that they did not make war against Jehoshaphat. Also some of the Philistines brought Jehoshaphat presents and silver as tribute, and the Arabians brought him flocks, 7,700 rams, and 7,700 male goats. So Jehoshaphat became increasingly powerful, and he built fortresses and stored cities in Judah. He had much property in the cities of Judah, and the men of war, mighty men of valor, were in Jerusalem. These are their numbers, according to their fathers' houses. Of Judah, the captains of thousands, Adnah, the captain, with him 300,000 mighty men of valor. And next to him was Jehohanan, the captain, and with him 280,000. Next to him was Amasiah, the son of Zichri, who willingly offered himself to the Lord, and with him 200,000 mighty men of valor. Of Benjamin, Eliada, a mighty man of valor, and with him 200,000 men, armed with bow and shield. And next to him was Jehozabad, and with him 180,000 prepared for war. These served the king, beside those who the king put in the fortified cities throughout all Judah. And that's 2 Chronicles chapter 17. And we see how Jehoshaphat, he strengthened himself, and he followed the Lord. He followed the ways of his father David, and he feared God. He sought God, it says in verse 4. He sought God, the God of his father, and walked in his commandments. And I also like what it says, it says that he received riches and honor. But despite this, in verse 6 it says, his heart took delight in the ways of the Lord. That's a powerful verse. When we gain riches and honor, sometimes our hearts take delight in ourselves. But his heart was taking delight in the ways of the Lord. So he remained humble. And then also, you might wonder, why did we read this whole chapter? I think just a few verses would have been fine. I think it was important to read this whole chapter because verse 7 and 8, it shows that it wasn't just enough that he had God. He wanted all his cities to know and be acquainted with God. So he sent teachers, he sent leaders and Levites and the priests so that they could teach the people about God. And it says that it was effective, that the fear of the Lord fell on all the kingdoms of the land, also not just on the people of Judah. And even the Philistines, the sworn enemies of Judah and Israel, even they brought tribute to Jehoshaphat. And again, I sometimes go back and forth between saying Jehoshaphat and Jehoshaphat using the J or the Y. Again, in Hebrew, there really is no J, so they used the Y sound, yeah. And so sometimes that there is some differentiation. I'm not consistent with how I say it. And then when it comes to the captains, this just shows how many men there were willing to serve and ready to serve, and how they were all strengthened. But in verse 10, it also says that they did not make war against Jehoshaphat. So even though he had all these people and they were ready, they didn't need to be used, which that's a good thing, isn't it? You don't need to use your military, but they're ready if you need them. I like how it also said that in verse 16, Amasai, the son of Zikri, willingly offered himself to the Lord. That's how we need to be. We need to willingly offer ourselves to the Lord and to the people that the Lord has put over us. Willingly offer ourselves to God's service. And then I'll also read 2 pages from Prophets and Kings. Got it right again, yay. Prophets and Kings, page 191 and 192. Great gain in obeying God. Throughout the kingdom, the people were in need of instruction in the law of God. In an understanding of his law lay their safety. By conforming their lives to its requirements, they would become loyal both to God and to man. Knowing this, Jehoshaphat took steps to ensure to his people through thorough instruction in the Holy Scriptures. The princes in charge of the different portions of his realm were directed to arrange for the faithful ministry of teaching priests. By royal appointment, these instructors, working under the direct supervision of the princes, went about throughout all the cities of Judah and taught the people. And as many as endeavored to understand God's requirements and to put away sin, a revival was effected. To this wise provision for the spiritual needs of his subjects, Jehoshaphat owed much of his prosperity as a ruler. In obedience to God's law, there is great gain. In conformity to the divine requirements, there is a transforming power that brings peace and goodwill among men. If the teachings of God's word were made the controlling influence in the life of every man and woman, if mind and heart were brought under its restraining power, the evils that now exist in national and in social life would find no place. From every home would go forth an influence that would make men and women strong in spiritual insight and in moral power, and thus nations and individuals would be placed on vantage ground. Isn't that powerful? There is great gain in obeying God. We might not see it as such. Keeping the Sabbath is probably one of the hardest commandments to keep, but because it requires a lot of faith. You have to be willing to sometimes not work on the Sabbath when you really need to work. Like, I lose so much time on Sabbath because I need to use that time for school, but I decide Sabbath is a day of rest, and I'm going to spend time with God. I'm going to spend time with my church family, and I'm going to just commit it into God's hands. And so we might not see the advantage and the gain, but God is able to provide. And time again, I have been blessed with keeping the Sabbath and just waiting patiently on the Lord. And not only that, I have greater peace and happiness in keeping the Sabbath. And so, though the world, it might not always be in the case of Jehoshaphat, where he was given riches and honor, it might not be the case for us, but God gives us a peace which passes all understanding. And there is great gain in other ways in obeying God. He is able to provide for our needs, and sometimes he goes above and beyond, like we see with Jehoshaphat. And so I encourage you to take steps to keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. That's what Revelation chapter 14 says. The patience of the saints are those who keep the commandments of God and have the faith of Jesus. We need to do that. We need to have the transforming power of the Bible, of his word, in our hearts and in our minds, controlling us, bringing into its restraining power and ennobling all our thoughts and ideas and affections. That's what we need. And if the whole world were to have this, like Ellen White says, so many of the world's problems would cease to exist. People would be kind to each other. There wouldn't be so much strife. People would look after each other and have God as their number one interest and how they can please Him and give honor and glory to Him. And we have a duty to be like those priests, like those Levites, like the princes that Jehoshaphat had, who went out into the cities and taught the people. They were to teach the people about God, about His law. They were to direct the work. We need to do that. We need to go out and give instruction in the law of God. And by conforming our lives to God's requirements, we would become both loyal to God and man. And as many as endeavor to understand God's requirements, they put away sin, and a revival was effected. And that's what we need, is a revival, not only in our own hearts, but in the hearts of the people. So let's seek to obey God, not just because there is great gain in obeying God, whether that be spiritual or financial or what's the other word I'm looking for? Let's see. It is not only spiritual or financial, but your image, getting honor. I totally missed the word. No, I do not go back and edit these videos. Not very much anyway, because this is not a big budget production. But there is great gain, but we shouldn't obey God just because of that great gain. We need to obey God because we love Him and He loved us. And He is our loving Father. And we obey our fathers, not because we get gain, but because it's the right thing to do and because we love them. And then our fathers can bless us and help us. So let's obey God, and let's go out and teach others how to obey God also. Thank you for watching. Again, leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time on Bible Excerpts.